So we're gonna have a share right in the day. I wanted to just share that it's really interesting to experience a facilitator that I find reminiscent of myself, in my own estimation, of course, and how much medicine is in that. Um, it's not to praise myself and say, yes, they were exemplary or blah, blah, blah. But this person I found really surprised me because they seem so, for my prejudices and my positive projections, very capable and in control and everything. And when they held the space, there was regular, frequent consultation with our chief mentor. And what's all that shouting for? What's all the fun that I'm missing out on? And periods of, there was beautiful cycles of order and chaos, for want of any better words. And so we just reflected to our brother how we experienced it, and that there was a lot of medicine in it. And for me personally, I found a place where I had to find my own sovereignty in that, because there was that element of, as they called it today, insanity, and yeah, this kind of element of chaos that momentary, like a submersion into the chaos, and it allowed everybody to find where their, what's the word, not yardstick, where their depth was, yeah, to find the level again of the depth of, how far deep in can I go before fully being drowned. And I don't think, I think at the end of this process, there was no one that felt dysregulated. Usually at the end, the question is, after everybody has shared their impact shares, including the facilitator, how was it for them? And our lead head honcho will share later in the after dinner. Then he'll give his master feedback. But we all share our impact shares. I just forgot what I was going to say. But yeah. Oh yeah. And then after all that, the question is usually voiced, is there anybody that's not doing okay? Pretty standard, right? But there was nobody today. And for all that, chaos and dysregulation, potentially, what looked like potential dysregulation, everybody found their depth in the entire fabric. And I find that really interesting, of course I do, to to contemplate and to experience. So yeah, I just wanted to share that little piece. And facilitation is a many-layered animal. It's really something to test. Think you've mastered this thing called life? You think you can stand in front of people and propose to have the right to stand in front of people and to invite them on a journey? I loved the way the person that I was somehow thrown together with at the very end, this unexpected piece of, again, finding sovereignty in the chaos, in the ocean of unknowing, finding a piece of sanity or reason of why we're here. And for me, there was, okay, I have to just immerse quickly into this place of, there was a piece on masculine and feminine, and the masculine and feminine finding their place and how to relate to the boundaries, basically, boundaries of where do I end and another begins, and all the grievances and all the deaths of the masculine or the sacred masculine or the divine masculine, and where the feminine was finding their place within that. And like I shared, it was a position of tremendous, profound privilege to be able to just be witness to that, to be present to that, and have the luxury of just sitting back in a way. I mean, I wouldn't be as crass as to say be entertained, but just being really touched and feeling like I felt what those other women were feeling. Okay, so the mat was open, so people were going on the mat to explore the theme that had been opened up by the person who had shared and was being invited onto the mat as the chief sort of, I don't know what you call it, client or whatever. And yet I didn't feel like I needed to go on the mat myself to join all the other women that were for want of a better word, writhing and moving through the energy themselves and sounding and voicing, all fine and well. Like as my personal art practice, sounding and voicing is my thing. But in this context, yes, as a therapeutic modality, it's like, okay, it felt like, no, I don't really feel like I'm needed or it's appropriate for me right now. I mean, sure, I could go on and then I would probably find a thread of some channeling and express it as only I could, blah, blah, blah. But it didn't feel relevant right then. And in fact, for a lot of this week, I've already felt this way. And I think the tone was set from the very beginning, from my very uncomfortable, edgy share about my relationship with the connection or not so intimate connection with, our beloved lead facilitator. So, within all that, what an interesting and beautiful mirror, because in the client, sorry, not a better word, before this person was somebody whom had invited all the brothers to come up and to embrace them, and spontaneously it ended up that they ended up singing to him. So it was a guy and having all these men, whoever felt called, and a lot of men just went up, and that was such a powerful imprint, in my body for all of us. And then in this next one, just totally uncontrolled, it happened that thanks, tree, whatever you're dropping on me. I think it's some kind of pointy oak tree. But that spontaneously it ended up being, now suddenly we had a mat full of women in their womanliness, and for me it felt like, wow, here I am. I've been in these spaces before where the transpersonal is moving through this kind of alchemical, metaphysical translation into kind of an integration, and being translated in many different languages, the psychic, the physical, the emotional, the intellectual, all this stuff, the emotional. And as I sat back there, somebody reached out to me, and by now it's a reflex, check in with my body. Is this okay for me? How do I feel? Am I reciprocating just to fawn and be polite, or do I really like to touch? Or, and it felt like, so I was just touching with somebody, and who it was in my other course. This same person is one of the assistants on the course, but the way I met her on that other course on the fields was she introduced me to herself by saying, I offer this grandmotherly presence of holding. So for anything and everything, come to me and let me embrace you. And I loved this right away, no bones about it, straight away, right when I meet you, this is what you're getting, and ever since then I've experienced Hilda as really, in this grace of, this is what I do. This is a service, a privilege, and a gift. And for me, it totally made sense. There was a potent medicinal brew of womanhood being woven with the masculine there on the mat today. And in amongst all that, and this was the synthesis, a discordant, conclusion of an interim of discordance and potential full immersion dysregulation, but it was righting itself, like an upturned canoe. And in that, I found my feet by returning the touch, or allowing the touch with Hilda. And I realized, for me, this was the missing piece. It's the piece that we call the elders, the alchemy of our lineage and all of our ancestors that are there. And I realized this is the piece that I would never access with my conscious mind. And so this was a gift that I wouldn't have found if it had been held, if it had been controlled, I mean, in the nicest way, of course. We wanted to feel the facilitator in the hot seat. We wanted to feel his energy. Well, I did, I presume we all did. We want to feel like, okay, who is Jude now? He's different from who we had yesterday and in the morning of yesterday. We're going to have somebody else this afternoon. But this was the truth for me. And I know as I prefaced my impact share by saying, in him, I find a lot of me. You know, and people can take that any which way when I first say those things, but I didn't mean it in a complimentary way, and I didn't mean it in a derogatory way, and yet it's both and neither, and all of it and none of it. But what it did was allow me to find another piece of my sovereignty, to retrieve another, recover more of my younger me, so that I could climb closer to who I am embodied and present today. And that was by connecting with the loving embrace, the non-judging, all-giving, open, loving embrace of the grandmother. This was the strong medicine. And the interesting thing for me, not knowing, so I'm ignorant and talking out of my foot, is I feel, for me, the grandmother energy, this medicine contains like the grandfather as well. And the grandfather also contains the grandmother. In our human physical vessel, I'm not thinking about this beforehand, but it's just coming out through me, so God help me. It's just that in our third age as human beings physically, the grandmother, that divine feminine contains more of the divine masculine than ever before in our lives. And the same with the divine masculine. This grandfather will have more qualities of the holding, of the receiving, the receptivity that the divine feminine has, you know, the non-judgment. Well, that's what I feel right now. So who knows, maybe I'll be proved wrong by myself or others. So that was a really rich sharing. Into the unknown and into the chaos we go, and yet instead of drowning, we find that we can walk on water by receiving that piece of driftwood that comes our way that we thought was random and by accident. So yeah, let's see what's going on for the afternoon. I hope you're enjoying your Wednesday. So far there's lots of nourishment as usual.